Actually, as a B2B iGaming provider, we must navigate multiple jurisdictions which have different licensing requirements, different regulations to be compliant with everything. The first at utmost, I would say that we should be compliant with AML regulations and responsible gaming policies, especially in terms of dealing with B2C operators. The second aspect is related to IP rights, so our intellectual property, our trademark shall be protected. And of course, we shall consider contractual risks while negotiating agreement with our clients. For example, liability for technical compliance, for regulatory requirements. So we must be careful when drafting any contractual provision.
My work in the legal team consists of three main tasks. The first task relates to the due diligence process, which means that all new potential customers have to pass our due diligence or KYC checks before we can engage in any kind of written agreement. This is a fairly strict process dictated by the fact that we hold a GSC license, so we need to be very, very careful on how we conduct our checks. Following this process comes the second main task, which is related to agreements. Basically, I have to handle all matters starting with preparing an agreement draft, negotiating the agreement with the customer, and following with actually signing the agreement once that potential customer has passed the due diligence check. A third task, and which is also quite an important one, is related to the fact that I am the appointed nominated officer for Greenrock Limited, which means I am in charge of all AML-related processes. This is a very important part of the legal activity and of our business, since it is closely related to our licensing status and our relationship with the GSC on the Isle of Man.
The first point is to be aware of key licensing jurisdictions like UKGC, like MGA, like Isle of Man, Curacao, and to keep ourselves always updated on responsible gaming regulations and AML regulations, of course. The second point is to have a risky mindset. So iGaming is a very well regulated sphere, but we always need to consider risks when we deal with whether legal matters or compliance or something else. The third point is to be always in cooperation, collaboration with different departments. So most of all, legal cooperate with compliance department, but as well with technical teams, with finance teams, with integration and so on. And I would say the final point is to stay agile. It means that on the one hand, you have to abide by all the laws and regulations, and on the other hand, you shall strike a delicate balance between these regulations and your commercial interests.
When it comes to operating in grey zones or grey areas, this is always a challenge from a legal perspective, because we need to deal with facts and we need to provide solutions. Whenever we are facing a situation which is not regulated or insufficiently regulated and we are unsure of how to handle it, one way of solving this issue is by looking at situations that are closely related to the one we are facing and that have some sort of legal coverage, some sort of regulation, which one we can find some sort of precedent that we can rely on, because we always have to have some kind of basis for decisions and for the way we approach things. Another way of dealing with such situations is by approaching specialists, so specialized legal professionals who are closely related or integrated in that specific area, or for example in that specific market, and have a much more detailed approach and image of what is going on in that specific area. So it's always helpful to have a specialized opinion from someone who is much closer to the issue than we are and has a much more detailed view of the problem we are facing. Of course, we always have to be up to date with what is happening, since grey areas, grey zones are always subject to change. So either become even darker, which makes our work more difficult, or they become clearer or regulated, which is always helpful for us.